Good afternoon. Welcome to the regular Friday program of the City Club of Portland. I'm Mary Kramer, president of the club. First order of business is to introduce our new members who are here with us today. I'll ask them to stand when I call out their names, and then we'll give them a welcoming round of applause. First of all is Barbara Coogan Neidig, Director of Sales and Marketing, Coogan Brooks. Barbara, where are you? There you are. Thank you. Trish Trout, Annual Giving Officer, Portland State University. Please join me in welcoming our new members. I'd like to thank members Sarah Cogan and Beverly Rust, who helped these new members sign up with the club. I'd also like to welcome a guest that we have in the audience today. That's Judy Umake, who was the winner of a free lunch in a drawing at the Education Open Forum. Welcome, Judy. We're glad to have you with us. Couple of announcements. Next Friday, we have a hot debate on whether we ought to pass legislation that would require all business owners to provide health insurance to their employees. The title is Mandate Health Benefits for Small Businesses, Yes or No. On the podium will be John Sloan, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and Robert O'Brien, Managing Consultant, Foster Higgins, Seattle, will be here at the Portland Hilton. Tuesday, April 30th, we have a science breakfast coming up. R. Fabian Pease, who is a professor of electrical engineering at Stanford University, will be here. He's going to talk about alternatives to the exploding costs of chip manufacture. This is a breakfast meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning. The program begins promptly at 7:30. Breakfast costs $8. Reservations for coffee cost $2.25. It's at the Greenwood Inn at 10700 Southwest Allen Boulevard in Beaverton. If you're interested in attending, you do need to make a reservation. Please call the City Club office by noon on Thursday, April 25th. The club office number is 228-7231. This science breakfast is open to the public. In your bulletin this week, there was a form that was printed to give you the opportunity to invite some friends and colleagues to join the club. New members bring us fresh ideas and vitality, so we're always interested in them. If you would like to just invite people and hand them a brochure and a form to fill out to join, that's great. But if you'd rather have a letter sent by the president, just clip the coupon, fill it out, and send it into the club office. We also want you to reserve on your calendar October 18, 1991. This is the evening gala, which will feature an internationally known speaker for our 75th anniversary celebration. We will be celebrating for 4 Fridays, and we want you to mark your calendar for that one in advance. Our board host today, seated at the head table, is Lloyd Anderson. He's a member of the Board of Governors. He will have the privilege of asking the first question. The second question will be asked today by Tom Stanwood, who is chair of the Law and Public Safety Standing Committee. As usual, we will open to members' questions. We'll have a mic in the center of the floor. Tom will lead off from that position with the first question. And we'd like club members to come and ask questions. Remember, they are questions, not statements. If you're a little bit shy, we do give you the opportunity to write questions, and they're blanks on the table. Fill them out, hold them up, and staff members will pick them out. I will warn you, however, we do give preference to those members who go to the mic. Now for parting shots of a public reformer. Our reformer is a fifth-generation Oregonian and a longtime City Club member who served on the Board of Governors and has spoken to the club no fewer than 7 times. Believe me, it's a little bit difficult to write an introduction about someone we know so well. Most of us know Don Clark as a man who has spent 32 years of his career in public service. He has a long list of prestigious awards to accompany his accomplishments. Perhaps more important, though, is what his peers say about him. And so I found out some of the things they say about him. They say he's energetic, idealistic, and inspiration. They say he's always got a vision, and he can provide the driving force to make it a reality. He has a strong set of values that are consistently expressed in his work, and he continues to be a source of creative ideas. Today, he's going to share some of those ideas with us, perhaps sharing where we are versus where we ought to be, the region, the county, the city, and even City Club. Please join me in welcoming our City Club member, Don Clark.
President Kramer, thank you very much. It's indeed a pleasure to come here today and to see so many friends, board members of mine, colleagues, acquaintances. Even I am seeing somebody who is my friend that I feud with about half the time. Dick Brink is here from HUD. And I see a lot of former Don Clark staffers and managers and employees, and I really particularly appreciate that you would come out today. When I speak before the City Club, I'm always torn between wanting to tell you everything I know, and on the other hand, believing I've probably already told you everything I know on several occasions before. Because I've been a member of this club almost my entire adult life, and I've spoken to the club on a number of occasions. Mary already mentioned that. I thought it was a half a dozen. She says it was 7. In the process of deciding what I wanted to talk about today, I had to consult with some of my closest advisors, and Clyde Doctor is a former executive assistant of mine at Multnomah County, and I think Clyde is probably here today. He's a member of the club. And Clyde's advice to me was that I ought to compare my life and career with that of my aged and tattered yellow cat Bear. And actually, it was pretty good advice, and there are a number of similarities between Bear's status now and mine. We're both probably more interested in a good nap than in opportunities for new territory these days. I also feel especially close to another former executive assistant and colleague of mine, Ben Padro, who has been gone now for some years. Ben would caution me when I got ready to give a speech to keep it simple, short, and direct. You see, this is a time for me to reflect on what it all means. So that is one thing I want to do today, say thank you, and think out loud a little on my public career. The second thing I feel obliged to do is to report on the progress made on my direct challenge given to the community the last time I spoke on this platform, which was September 8, 1988. First, let me reminisce a little bit. In less than 1 week, I will celebrate my 58th birthday. In less than 2 weeks, I will retire from public life. 30 years ago, I was almost 28 years old, a member of the City Club, a sheriff's deputy and school teacher, yes, at the same time, and very soon would be one of 29 candidates running for sheriff of this county. During that campaign, I spoke of the need for a new kind of police, a police that was professional but compassionate, that was constitutional and also community-oriented, that stood up for those without power and protected us one from another. As a candidate for sheriff, I had to overcome the political obstacle that I did not look like a sheriff, too short and too young. As most of you know, I was elected sheriff. This community has also elected me a county commissioner, county commission chairman, and county executive. I've also run for governor of Oregon, taught at Portland State University, consulted for Kogan and Associates, led a social service agency, Central City Concern, and have for the last 3 years, I have been the executive director of the community's housing authority. While I have had different titles or stations at the several different institutions, my activities have been essentially the same. This community has indeed been very good to me and allowed me to pursue my chosen agenda. I want to come back to what I think that agenda is later on, but first let's look at the activities. I have thrashed about the civic landscape, proposing this and opposing that, building this and dismantling that, winning and losing, being right and indeed sometimes very wrong, college-educated cops, suicide prevention, drunks from jail to sobering stations, Hooper Detoxification Center, Janus Drug Treatment, Outside In, underground county shops, a covered bridge, Edgefield, city-county consolidation, light rail, Columbia River Gorge, 40-mile loop, county comprehensive plan, Larch Mountain salamanders, western pond turtles, longest public employees strike in state's history, 911, Burnside Nursing Clinic, Project Health, Health Choice, State Health Plan, Indo-Chinese refugee gardens, hazardous waste teams, protecting battered women and children, opposing the Veterans Administration Hospital, state court system, saving thrown-away children, gun control, Cheers van, pet population control, energy conservation, and so on. But you get the idea. Throughout my public career, I have had fights with almost everyone about something, and I have periodically flailed away at some giant-sized windmills. All of this is what I do. The community has been tolerant enough to put up with it and even honor me with public office. I have had supporters, a number in this room today, and I appreciate them being here, advisors, some of those also, and allies, and I would count almost all of you as that. I have had marvelously talented managers, a good share of them are here today, and staff and dedicated employees, and a lot of those are here today. I have had the support of my family, including that of my fine wife, Shirley, and finally, I've had some smashingly good adversaries. And to every one of you, I want to say thank you for all that you've done over the past years. This is a time for all things, and before I have totally worn out my welcome, a time to go forth and see the rest of the world. After April 30th, that's exactly what Shirley and I intend to do, to see the world and enjoy each other's company. My second purpose today is to bring you up to date on what progress I think we have made as a community to put an end to homelessness and to make Columbia Villa a model public housing project. Those were the challenges I raised to the community from this platform the last time I was here in September of 1988, 7 months after I had become the executive director of the Housing Authority. There was little precedent from other communities on how to proceed with these two difficult tasks. While I am pleased to say that much has been done toward ending homelessness, I am disappointed to report we won't get it done by the end of this year as I had hoped. When I stood before you 2.5 years ago, I honestly felt that this community could resolve the plight of the homeless within 3 years. I now realize that we will not do so in this time frame. Ending homelessness is indeed a very big undertaking. It requires planning, mobilizing, organizing, educating, coordinating, reminding, meeting, explaining, urging, insisting, and much more. It is easy to become lost in the issues of turf and dogma. My bureaucrats, your bureaucrats, his bureaucrats, her bureaucrats, and all these bureaucrats with their separate program priorities and goals are hard to steer into a common direction or timetable. In retrospect, I should have not been so optimistic with my goal of getting everyone inside by the end of 1991. But knowing the cause to be so just, the need so great, the dangers so apparent, I simply was what I am best at, very impatient. I still am. In spite of my disappointment in not being further along, we have much to celebrate. I recently met with the latest in a series of visitors to come to our community who came here to see and understand the Portland story. This husband and wife team was researching for their soon-to-be-published book on homelessness in America. They came from our nation's capital city, and they had traveled the country over. They had come to the clear conclusion that Portland, as is so often the case, was the nation's leader in mobilizing itself to address this issue. We in Portland have a clear description and inventory of the problem. We have a framework plan that identifies what it will take in units of housing and in supporting services to get people housed and to keep them that way. We are using existing local funds, including tax increment funds, pursuing every federal dollar available, as Dick Brink will testify to, and have a major initiative with our coalition partners to establish a state housing trust fund. We have a master agreement that has been signed by almost all of the important community boards, pledging their help and support to the goal of ending homelessness. The Funders Advisory Committee, lovingly referred to as the FAC, is the point of accountability for the community to see that this problem is addressed. The FAC is composed of representatives of the major groups or institutions needed to make this collaborative effort effective. The state of Oregon, Multnomah County, and I'm very pleased to see that several people are here from Multnomah County today, and including Chair Gladys McCoy, who's an old friend and colleague of mine and who has been a stalwart supporter of mine at the housing authorities, and I very much appreciate that. The city of Gresham, the city of Portland, who is represented here today also, the housing authority, United Way is also represented here today, the Community Action Agency, the religious community, foundations, and a very special and important partner, the Portland Chamber of Commerce. The city of Portland is represented on that commission by Commissioner Gretchen Kafori, who has assembled in her portfolio most of the city's key housing assignments and who personally cares a lot about the issue and the people that are involved. The city of Gresham is represented by its mayor, Gussie McRobert, who recently has demonstrated that city's commitment to play a strong role on these issues. Perhaps the representation that is most uniquely Portland comes from Vern Riles, who put himself on the FAC when he was chairman of the Portland Chamber of Commerce and has stayed on now as the immediate past chairman of the Chamber. I don't know of any other city in the United States where the Chamber would step up to the plate and become a major participant. Of course, even from a narrow point of view, it makes perfect sense for business to care about homelessness. But the fact is, only in our city has a business community moved to become such a partner, and there is little question in my mind that their purpose is to achieve a broad community good as well as meet the good for business test. So while it is indeed hard and has become even more difficult with the passage of Measure 5, we are making progress, and we must not stray from our purpose or become discouraged, and a new date must now be set. I judge that we are perhaps 40% of the way to our goal, and perhaps we already have accomplished the hardest part, obtaining broad community commitment and agreeing on a fundamental game plan. If we stay the course, 1996 should see our dream realized. The other night, my wife Shirley and I were returning from the downtown library. The light was green, but it appeared that a woman wearing a stocking cap and pushing a grocery cart piled high with her worldly possessions might walk against the light. Suddenly, Shirley said, "Watch out for the bag person." Then she added, "Poor thing, she needs to be someplace inside where she is loved." And I said, "With a wicker rocker." And Shirley added, "And kitties on her lap." You see, that's what it's all about. Everyone has to be someplace, and our people, each and every one, need a safe and secure place inside. And as I leave the Housing Authority, I ponder what we've done and what kind of leadership the agency will continue to play on this issue. And I think that Marjorie Illey, Dr. Marjorie Illey is here today, is she? No, she's not here. Is our planner who has put together the very extensive plans for addressing that issue. And I would not have asked Marge to do what I'm about to ask somebody else to do, because, you see, Dr. Marjorie Illey is a former nun, so I can't ask her to raise hell with the community if we don't deliver on this. Helen Barney is her boss and runs our Department of Planning and Development, Intergovernmental Relations, and it is there that I have vested the responsibility to address this set of issues and to continue to provide leadership for the community. And Helen, would you stand up so they can see who you are, so we know who we're holding accountable to deliver on that? Let me now turn to another challenge, Columbia Villa. Columbia Villa, I'm happy to report, is a changed place today. Fear and despair have been replaced with a new confidence and hope for the future. Good people from fine institutions have put forth unusual efforts and have overcome issues of turf protection and credit to deliver up a functioning neighborhood, a community where no one is unimportant and where everyone can aspire to a better life. The honored cast who have made this happen consist of, first of all, our residents, because part of this is ultimately theirs to do. And I believe that Ruby Faust, the chair of the Columbia Villa Tenants Council, is here today. Ruby, if you are here, would you stand up? There. I very much appreciate you coming. Judy Petrie is my Director of Housing Management and is who I turned to when we had trouble there and asked to get it in hand. And Judy, would you stand up? And Judy Petrie got me to call on Judy Bird. And is Judy Bird here? Judy Bird is here. I refer to Judy Bird as oftentimes as the mayor of Columbia Villa. And Judy Bird went out there with very little management experience, very little supervisory experience, and took on the responsibility of turning that troubled project around, and she's done a magnificent job, and I'm very proud of her. Also, our partners, and I've already mentioned Gladys McCoy being here today, and none of this would have happened at all if it weren't for Multnomah County and if it weren't for Gladys McCoy. And I truly mean that. Gladys was tenacious in having the county bureaucracy respond to the problems at Columbia Villa, and has kept that commitment. And in spite of Measure 5, there are no cuts in county programming at Columbia Villa. United Way went out of its way and I think responded much to my call at the last City Club speech and appropriated $120,000 of special funding to program at Columbia Villa, and had recreational programs for kids that otherwise would not have had those kind of experiences, and it continues to this day to provide those programs. School District Number 1 responded mightily and sent Sarah Smith, who is a social worker, to Columbia Villa, and she helped put the whole thing together. The City of Portland, and they changed their policies at the University Park Community Center to waive fees, the only place in town I think that was done. The State of Oregon, Kevin Concanon, Director of Human Resources, responding to the governor, sent special drug treatment slots to Columbia Villa, as well as many organizations, nonprofit agencies, and individuals who have contributed to the dream of making Columbia Villa a healthy place to live. I reminded you earlier of the kind of police I sought to create in 1962 as I ran for sheriff. A new kind of police, professional, compassionate, constitutional, community-oriented, police who would stand up for those without power and protect us one from another. They exist. They are the men and women at the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, Columbia Villa Safety Action Team, and there's several members here today, and I'd like them to stand up if they would. Because of the Safety Action Team and the 31 other agencies working together to address the root problems of people in a caring and respectful manner, the Columbia Villa of today does not resemble the Columbia Villa of 1988. In 1988, the system was not working for the residents of Columbia Villa. Most residents lived in fear, huddling behind closed curtains and teaching their children to hit the floor whenever gunshots were heard. Drug use and gang activities were luring Columbia Villa's youngsters toward dead-end lives of crime. But in less than 3 years, it is now a community where people can experience hope, have real opportunity for social mobility, and feel safe. Once vacant playgrounds now teem with children and healthy activities. Where the villa was a downright dangerous place in 1988, it is today safe and secure. And it offers some of the best public housing available anywhere in the United States. And it's done that, by the way, and I might mention, with the great help and support of Dick Brink, the HUD manager locally, who helped to get us the funds to do the remodeling out there, as well as some of the early money for the Safety Action Team. Columbia Villa is now a place where people have an honest chance to improve their lives. They are becoming empowered. The even better news is that what has been done at Columbia Villa is now being replicated in several areas of the community. In the Rockwood neighborhood, Multnomah County, the City of Gresham, the Housing Authority, and the local schools are working together to address the needs of that neighborhood. The Portland Police have 4 community policing demonstrations, including one in partnership with the Housing Authority. And in Southeast Portland, Southeast Uplift is in the early stages of planning for a major effort similar to the Columbia Villa model for the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood. Brentwood-Darlington used to be called Arrow Heights, and I've got to pause and I'm going to ad-lib a little bit from my text. I remember years ago, after consulting with my colleague Mel Gordon, who's here today, who was on the board with me at that time, I trapped Lloyd Anderson, who was then a city commissioner, and took him out to Arrow Heights and told him that this neighborhood had a lot of problems. In fact, part of the water system was even run through wood pipe. It was that bad, and it had all kinds of street problems and other infrastructure problems. And why didn't he, as a good city commissioner, take the initiative and annex Arrow Heights? And Lloyd said, "Would you take me out of here? It's depressing." Arrow Heights finally did get annexed, but not at that time. And it was. Arrow Heights has a lot of problems, and it needs the kind of effort that the community can muster, as we've done at Columbia Villa. Whenever the Columbia Villa model is employed, the secret will be the same: to get a core team of highly motivated people of goodwill who will care more about the people in the neighborhood than they do about turf and credit. If that can be done, we can, I am sure, repeat the magic that has occurred at Columbia Villa. Now, as I prepare to retire from public life, I ponder my contribution and whether I have left the community any better than I found it. While I think we can all choose between doing good, doing bad, or doing nothing, the reality is that most of us do all three some of the time. So I will hope that the master historian, on examining my record, will be able to find that overall the results were that people without power or good fortune suffered less, that the environment was honored and protected more than abused, and finally and personally, that I had done my part most of the time according to the values that were transmitted to me with such great clarity by my mother. For you see, I am a reformer. That is why I belong to the City Club, which itself is dedicated to civic reform. Everyone in this room, in my view, is a reformer. That's why you're here, not to nibble on noodles and beef or socialize with your cronies. You are here because you want to make the community a better place, to reform our institutions and systems and to make them better. A reformer is not a revolutionary dedicated to overturning the whole of society and achieving a new order according to a new doctrine. A reformer believes in the current system as it is supposed to operate. The reformer longs for the realization of the already articulated lofty aims or stated goals. Nor is the reformer a utopian who believes that one can achieve a perfect order, but a reformer is always seeking ways to make things better and searching for the broad public interest. The reformer believes that we can search for and find a greater common good. A well-motivated reformer can make those around him uncomfortable, just as the City Club has on occasion made politicians and institutions squirm. So have I had the opportunity to challenge the status quo and to try to accelerate the pace of change. I have had the good fortune to pursue an agenda of reform in a community that is not self-satisfied or blind toward injustice. We in Portland and Multnomah County may not always appreciate what we have, a community that is not afraid to try new things, to pioneer new agendas, or to develop models for the rest of the nation. Where else would people not laugh out loud about the idea of ending homelessness? And not only that, but dare to set a timetable. Where else would we throw down our traditional way of doing things so that we could try a new approach to combat the terrible problems wrecking the lives of our poor youth? We do not always succeed, but we do make progress. And although I am perplexed and frustrated as anyone when I see us backslide, as we are now doing because of Measure 5, I have ultimate faith in this community, in this state, that we will recover. Throughout my public career, I have at times been impatient that others did not sense the same urgency to reform the system. Sometimes that impatience has stood me well, driven me on to attempt something that complacency would not have allowed. Sometimes it has gotten me into trouble. In fact, quite often it's gotten me into trouble. One of my staff members, Dean Smith, used to tell me to slice the loaf one slice at a time, to give people something they could swallow and digest, rather than to shove the whole thing down at one time. Sometimes I have regretted that I did the latter and not the former. Too often, from the political point of view, I tried to achieve too much too soon. But from the reformer's perspective, perhaps, I think that approach that was taken through much of my career was probably right. At least it felt right to me. And this community, time and time again, has allowed me the opportunity to pursue this agenda of reform. So how does one sum it all up? What is the message? What does it mean? I've thought a lot about that as I look back on all those years. I earlier told you of Ben Padro's counsel to me: keep it simple, short and direct. After all those years and all those projects and issues and the millions of words, Ben, I think I finally have it. We need, above all else, to do two things. We need to take care of the planet on which we live, and we need to take care of each other. Thank you.
Lloyd Anderson has the privilege of the first question. Lloyd.
Don, over the years that you've been working, you've had a reputation of being able to find good people for your staffs and also to have a vision of the future. If you had it to say, and looking at the next 3 to 5 years, or maybe even a little longer, what are the major issues you see that need to be dealt with, kind of if you were king?
Well, Lloyd, maybe it's never too late. You and I could run for that. I've already kind of articulated some that are near and dear to my heart, and I've kind of told you what ultimate bottom lines I see. And I suppose in addition to those couple, particularly addressing the homeless, everybody has to have some place to go. We just cannot, as a community, tolerate leaving people outside. That's unacceptable. We also have to protect the environment, and that has to be done at every level of the society. And one component of that is learning new ways to get around in transportation. Mel Gordon is here with me today, and Mel and I were some of the early fighters for light rail in this town, and Multnomah County was the first jurisdiction to withdraw Mount Hood corridor approval when nobody else had done that, and then steadfastly, when almost everybody else in town wanted to abandon the notion of light rail and go to exclusive bus lanes, Multnomah County insisted that light rail be pursued as an option. Light rail has to be finished. The system has to be finished. There is no substitute for that. And as the state struggles mightily with all kinds of issues, there are two that really have to, as far as I'm concerned, be addressed. And one of them they've been thrashing around with now for over a decade, and that's health care for every Oregonian. There is no excuse we don't all have health care. We already spend more than enough money to deliver health care for every Oregonian. We ought to be getting it. And the state of Oregon can deliver it up if they have the courage to do so. And the third thing, at the state level, they must find a new way to finance public education, because there is no economic prosperity in the future of this state unless we have an investment in the human resource and particularly in the education of our youth. So that would be my priority, I think.
Tom Stanwood, Chair of the Law and Public Safety Committee. Tom?
Thank you, Mary. Don, one of your disappointments that you've mentioned in your remarks was the issue of homelessness. But looking back on your public career the last 30 years, have there been other disappointments that you have particularly been concerned about, things that should have been done that are still undone?
Yeah, there are. There are some. On the whole, I don't know what things I would do particularly different. I might be more successful in my political career if I did some things differently. And even if I'd chosen when I did things, it might have been better. But I'm not sure I would redo them. There are some things, though, that I would, that I'm disappointed in. One, and they're odd. They're all over the map. I doubt if there's a person in this room who knows the name Nona Christine Jackson. I know that name. There may be, but I doubt it. Nona Christine Jackson is the one unsolved homicide case when I was sheriff. And to this day, I think about that, and think about that somebody died all by herself in a woods out by Gresham with her wrists bound behind her back, and we were unable to find out who that was. And so in that way, it's almost like I'm kind of haunted by that. The one unsolved homicide I had, I would have that solved. I already told you about state health plan. That was the most important concept I had anything to do with in my entire life. It's valid, it makes sense, it could deliver up to every citizen an increase in the quality of their life, and we could do it within existing resources. And the fact that I didn't get to be governor to impose that on the legislature is a sadness. In fact, it was that reason that I wanted to run for that office, because I wanted so much to see that state health plan implemented. And those are a couple. I suppose governmental reform, lots of things that should be done to make the system work better that didn't get done, and I labored at to try to push through. And it was said once that the only place that city-county consolidation ever occurred was when there were scandals in government and the citizens decided to throw the rascals out. And I understand that, but here we had the rascals saying it was a swell deal, and the public said no way. And that's kind of a disappointment. But on the whole, this is a good town, and I feel like we accomplished a lot and continue to accomplish a lot. And one of my friends and supporters and longtime dreamers about state health care, Gretchen, has a question.
No, I'm going to break the rules here. I've done it before, so why change? I just want to make a comment that your vision has been terrific and inspirational for all of us. You hold us to a standard, and I think the thing we are going to miss the very most about you is your unabiding compassion for all the people of this state. We are going to miss you a lot, Don.
Thank you. Charlie.
Well, I assume you'll come back. Charlie Davis, member. When you spoke to the City Club about homelessness, this was the forum you used, but when you talked about the efforts to deal with the problem, you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, the United Way, several other organizations, but I didn't hear you mention the City Club. Is the City Club a player in public policy, or could it be a player dealing with public policy, or is it just a Friday afternoon entertainment? Could you comment about that?
I could. I know that the club historically, and I said in my speech, has made politicians and institutions squirm, and they have. When there was open corruption in this town, it was the City Club that brought the City Hall down and changed the administration and changed the police bureau. That was one time, and there have been others. The City Club, when I was on the board, established 4 paramount issues for the new century to deal with, and one of them was governance for the new century. One of them was homelessness and kind of the folks who were outside the mainstream, and they had grappled mightily with what we were going to call that subject matter. And there was a series of programs and study committees and so on that worked at that for some period of time. If I remember correctly, one of them was education/economic development, and I can't remember what the fourth one was. But for a while they pursued those. I think the City Club could have been far more effective in moving those agendas had they been more action-oriented, and there are techniques you can use without losing your educational kind of goals and motives and losing your 501c3 status. You can call public officials to task. You can call them in and ask them what progress are being made on things. You can have City Hall and County Courthouse watchers. You can have study committees that call things the way they are, flatly and without any niceties, and publicly. So you can stir around, you can create movement, and you can create change by those kind of activities. I don't think the City Club has done enough. I was encouraged to see that you now have a process for having somebody represent the club on committees and so on. And that's a slight move in the right direction, I think. But not enough. The City Club ought to be pursuing things the City Club thinks are major areas needing reform. And they ought to do it aggressively, and they ought to do it strategically. You ought to sit down and figure out what it takes to do it and get it done.
Paul Parker, City Club member. Don, in your speech, you said that it's easy to get caught up in the issues of turf and dogma. My bureaucrats, your bureaucrats, his, her bureaucrats, their bureaucrats. You've touched upon this, but more specifically, as this region grows and as the layers of government seem to become more complex, what are we going to do about it? What about consolidation? What about the concept of Willamette County? What should happen?
Okay? And it seems to me it was 1982, Adam Davis, for the Future Forum, Adam Davis, a member of the club, did some survey work and found out that the electorate in the 4-county metropolitan area, which included Clark County, Washington, if given a ballot measure to consolidate all local governments into one, there would be a majority for that move. That's astounding. But it showed that on the basic kind of abstract about what kind of government people want, they want less governments. So I think one of the great reforms would be to have less governments. We just have too damn many of them. It's impossible to keep track of them or what they're doing or figure out who's got what piece of the puzzle. And then when they all get in the same room trying to do something, they begin bumping up against each other, and nothing really ever comes out unless you take tremendous amounts of energy and pour into making something come out that's coordinated. It's very, very difficult. There's been some recent research coming out of Kentucky where the citizenry had some massive consolidations, and they found that the governments were more responsive consolidated. So the idea that if it's bigger, it's not as close, seemed to evaporate out of that research. So I would think that the Willamette County doesn't go quite far enough. If you took Willamette County and then eliminated all the other special service districts, and I see my good friend Rena Kuzma and my former manager Rena Kuzma is here today, and consolidate Metro, the counties, and all the cities and the service districts into one unit, and then countered the centralization of the government effects by decentralizing the services and coordinating them in a similar fashion as we've done at Columbia Villa in every neighborhood in the region, you might have something that was not only highly responsive to citizens, but citizens could hold accountable for the results.
Mr. Clark, my name is Nancy Sanders. I know you, other than the newspaper, through Michelle Williams, who I met years ago at Portland State when she was a graduate student. And if Michelle Williams thought enough of you to work for you for years and years, you're okay in my book. Okay?
Thank you.
And on behalf of lots of folks who aren't here, from the community, we do thank you.
Pardon?
We do thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, excuse me. May we have your question, please? Yeah, question. So I'm sure Mrs. Kaffour didn't mean it, but you seem pretty young and healthy and have lots of ideas and things. And after you do whatever you're going to do now, you're more than welcome in the community. Leave your money at home, leave your jewelry at home, put on your grubbies. And most of the young people now are voting less and less and less and less and less. And people like yourself and anyone else here who does have, you know, whose heart is in the right place, just to put it briefly, I don't mean to be rhetorical, but you're more than welcome to mingle with the masses, because more and more young people are not voting every year. That's serious, okay? And because of my education, I'm picky about words, and I understand and respect and appreciate what you and yours mean when you say homeless, but I always will insist on the fact that none of us are homeless. The earth is our home.
Okay?
okay?
Okay? Thanks.
And we thank you.
Thank you.
And on with it. And once you write a book or make a movie or something.
Okay? Thank you. All right. Ned?
Ned Look, member. Don, getting back to housing, as you know, the Ford Foundation has allocated through the Oregon Community Foundation roughly $500,000 towards addressing the problems of low-income housing. And I would like to have your comments to how effective you think this effort can be and what its potential impact might be.
Thank you. The community intermediary is something that's vitally needed. It is an important piece of the puzzle in providing housing that's affordable for all people in the community. Government needs to get its act together and its organizational issues ironed out so that they can maximize the value of public dollars that are available. And then there needs to be an interface with the private sector. And that interface, called the intermediary, is what this is all about. And it establishes, by the initial grant from the Ford Foundation, the potential to pick up other grant funds locally, an opportunity to advise and assist not-for-profits in the community how to develop strategies to deal with low-income housing and other community development issues in neighborhoods. So it was a place that when, like I was at Central City and was having trouble figuring out how to move, I could have gone, and there would have been a board and staff to help me figure out how to finance, how to manage complex projects to deliver up affordable housing. So it's an absolutely critical piece. It's a piece that government cannot do. It's a piece where government and the private sector kind of come together to assist the not-for-profit sector in helping to achieve housing for everyone in our community. Very important piece of business. Jim Raish, also known as Ed McNamara, which is a story unto itself. My good friend is the executive director of that, and who's wonderful. And he ran Reach Community Development out in Southeast that created so much fine housing and maintains it for low-income people. So that's a very important community project. It ought to be supported by all of us.
Thank you very much.
I'm Gus Mattersdorf, a member of the club. I've always wondered why a person of your vision and of your attitudes chose a career in the sheriff's office, which doesn't strike me as a place where reformers are particularly welcomed. I wonder if you could explain that to me.
I'm not sure I know how. See, I truly do believe that you can say you're a nation of laws, not of men, and all those things, and you can talk about getting just laws and all that kind of stuff. But when it finally comes down to it, the law is no better than its enforcement. And if we have thugs and bullies wearing uniforms and beating people up, that's how much justice we have. On the other hand, if we have people that care about people and want to protect people and want to help people and want to assist people and want to protect people from each other and want to love the community, then you're going to have more justice. So I can't think of anything probably more important in government than enlightened, decent, compassionate, constitutional law enforcement. I've devoted a good share of my life to that, and I believe we have an example. I told you what that example is, and I would like to see that example the model for what the whole community ought to have, and then it ought to go on from there. There are some of my other managers. Lee Brown, who's Commissioner of Police in New York now, was Sheriff of Multnomah County. And Lee's energy and his leadership on issues of community policing are now taking place at the national level. Lee is going to soon be the president of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And Lee Brown is as fine a human being as you'll ever meet. And I'm delighted to see people of that caliber taking up those kind of important posts. It's obvious that we have an awful long way to go in this country, and we have a lot of other traditions than providing that kind of law enforcement. but it can be done, and I think that the rewards to a community are enormous, and particularly to poor people. Very important.
I'm Ray Polani, a City Club member. Don, as you are retiring, you alluded a couple of times to Measure 5 and the problems of it. Do you think we need replacement funding for it? And if so, what kind? Now that you're retiring, you can probably feel free to speak. What do you think?
Okay. I would have answered that even if I weren't retiring. I think I'm as appalled and shocked as I am, partially because we let people like the three of them tell us what kind of tax policy we ought to have as a community. And they gave to us an enormous turkey. And they have created chaos in this state for the next 5 years. And we've only started to see it unfold. And the ramifications are enormous. But like I said, I think we will survive it, and we will figure it out, and we will come back. But I think it was not a good idea, and it was the citizens of this community that did it. We can't blame this on Ontario, Oregon, or Grants Pass. It was Multnomah County voters that did it. And they did it at a time they were embracing another tax, it's bonds, for TriMet, and they should have voted for that. Yes, we should have voted for that. It was very necessary. But then they did this other thing, and it was in response to the same taxes that we as a community voted for. Made no sense whatsoever. I know that we are too dependent on the property tax. There's no question in my mind about that. I'm a native Oregonian. I was born in Silverton, Oregon, Marion County, and it's in my genes not to like sales taxes. I despise sales taxes. Having said all that, the time has probably come for Oregon to have a sales tax, because we need to have a balanced system, and that's probably the way you get a balanced system. I hate to say that as an Oregonian, but I think as somebody who cares about the vital services that are needed, I think I need to say that.
Said that I was entitled to ask one question, and I would like to ask Don how he intends to deal with homelessness and public housing in the Greek Islands.
Shirley and I plan on spending lots of time in the Greek Islands, and people ask me periodically if I'm running for public office, and I always assure them that I'm running for mayor of Paros. Thank you very much.
We are adjourned.